I mean, it's part of what's coming with HR 1 and HR 127.
Okay, so you know what? Good segue. I don't even know the question to ask you. What is HR 1 and HR 27? I mean, what is it? Explain to the people who don't know what it is, why it's relevant, and why we need to know about it.
So HR 1 is their big election law reform, and they want to federalize what they just did in the 2020 election. So they want to force states to basically do mass voter registration, to do automatic voter registration, to allow same-day voter registration, to not allow states to remove people from what's commonly called dirty rolls. It was like right now, if people have moved, if you have proof of they're dead, things like that, you can remove them. They're trying to actually prohibit a lot of that by federal law. They're trying to not allow states to change election rules other than those rules, but require federal pre-clearance with the Attorney General's office before they can do so. Massive mandatory early voting in all states for 15 days up to the election. Mandatory mail-in balloting for all states. Not allow signature verification checks to occur in a meaningful manner without all these limitations. Not allow any identification check to ever occur for any for any vote cast in any manner. So they want to take the worst aspects of the election rules that Time Magazine called a cabal meant to fortify the election. Yes. And they want to really fortify the election. They want to fortify all federal elections going forward. And it's HR 1. It's their number one bill, their priority bill.
Okay. HR is House of Representatives? House Resolution. Okay. Okay. Interesting. And then, so basically HR 1 is to formalize that which was only sort of, what's the word? Not piecemeal applied, but was only applied in certain states.
And it's an attempt to completely circumvent the states and state legislatures. Also to require redistricting committees that are partisan committees that are separate. They want to strip the state legislatures of all control over all federal elections. As to the presidential election, I think the law is patently unconstitutional. The Constitution does not afford Congress any such role. As to any state election, it's patently unconstitutional. It doesn't afford Congress any such role. So the only question is, what about state elections for Congress and senator? There, the way the clause is written is it first and foremost gives all power to the state legislatures in how the House member or Senate is chosen, but it does include a caveat that's pretty broad that says that Congress can change that. So the provisions as to the House and the Senate are probably constitutional, at least in that terms. There's other constitutional problems that will arise in terms of what they're trying to do. But those provisions would, as to the House and Senate members, most of them would likely be upheld as constitutional if challenged. They're also trying to prohibit who can challenge the statute and where they can challenge. You can only sue in the District of Columbia. You can only sue on these grounds. So they want to rewrite the rules so that they will never lose. And this is the bill that attempts to do so. They also want to force all kinds of disclosures. Some of those disclosures aren't bad, like they want to require paper verified ballots. That's mostly the case these days now. But things like that. They want to require more disclosure about foreign involvement in the election and who is advertising. Most of that is not bad, but there's aspects of it. You have a right of anonymous speech, and they're really trying to circumvent that ability to do anonymous speech. And in the current environment, we know who that punishes. The people who might otherwise want to stay quiet about their supporting Trump, but they're doing so in some independent expenditure without going through the campaign. Right now, they have anonymous speech rights. They want to take that away. Whether the First Amendment allows them to is an open question. They also want to help Congress members and their liberal allies. If you're running for office, you now can take donations to pay your health insurance, pay your child care bill, pay your licensing certification training, pay a whole bunch of things that have historically not been considered campaign expenses. That's a backdoor ticket to bribery is what it is. So it's a very perilous law that hopefully at least the Senate rejects, but it's up in the air. It's going to be a close vote. But I think as it applies to the presidential election, will be struck down as unconstitutional. It will be an uphill battle to get it struck down as unconstitutional on the House and Senate side.
Okay, interesting. Now, just bringing this up because I think this is a joke, but you never know in
No,
today's world.
it's not a joke. They're insistent on strict signature matches that are completely different than the ones they did for mail-in balloting during the election.
Okay,
They have
so
totally different standards.
this is amazing because I literally I brought it up almost as a joke because I thought it was a joke that Newsom is trying to require signature. Okay, interesting. That's phenomenally fascinating in the the intersection of diarrhea and vomiting type fascinating meeting again.
I'm
Okay.
going to be looking at, for those people and for others springing suit, arguing that all nominating petitions, candidate petitions, recall and initiative and referendum petitions have to be governed by the same set of signature standards as absentee ballots. And you watch, they're going to be all these state officials all of a sudden will be climbing the walls. But we'll see if judges are going to be willing. Are they going to be openly hypocritical? Are they willing to tell the world we have a real signature match for referendums, petition, third parties, and recalls, and we don't really have one for absentee mail-in balloting? I just go on. I just want them to go on the record and say that they might have some difficulty doing so. So we'll see how some of that litigation turns out.
All right, and now what was HR 127?
So when they're busy taking out the First Amendment, and step 2 is to take out the Second Amendment. So HR 127 seeks to, just as HR 1 seeks to federalize all election rules that govern election to federal office, the HR 127 seeks to federalize all gun control laws. So it would require a national registry where your name is publicly available to know that you own a gun, what gun you own, how you own it. Before you could get such a gun, you would have to pass, in many cases, psychological testing. Your mental health would have to be approved by the system. They would have to make sure that you're okay to even have a gun. So they're skipping the red flag laws. There doesn't have to be a red flag anymore. Even to get a gun, it will be conditioned on you being designated by one member of the professional class that it's okay for you to have one. One other component of HR 1. They also seek to criminalize election fraud in a different context. Remember, we were talking about that New York case. The what's that guy's his meme name?
Ricky Vaughn and
Ricky Vaughn.
Remember,
I said there's no such law that criminalizes it. This law basically admits that because they try to criminalize exactly what that is, and it's like, why do you need a law to criminalize that if the current law already criminalizes it? If I was Ricky Vaughn's defense lawyers, I'd be citing HR 1 on motion to dismiss because this clearly shows what he did was not prohibited by federal criminal law. But they want to go past that. They want to criminalize misinformation in the election contest. I'm sure that could never get abused. So who knows where that's going to go. But HR 127 also has criminal enforcement components. They want to criminalize, they want to regulate, they want to bureaucratize, they want to put the professional class and the federal government in control over who has guns, and they want to make sure the whole world can know who has a gun, what kind of gun they own, and everything else, while also banning a whole bunch of categories of guns. They want to label certain things automatic that are just not automatic weapons if you understand guns. And I don't purport to be a gun expert. As the people in the comment section, they'll always say, you got this wrong, you got that point wrong. I'm not a gun expert by any stretch of the imagination.
I'm just saying, and I'm not venturing into it either. I just know this law sounds very similar to the state of gun ownership in Canada. Small arms, handguns are basically illegal unless you have a special license. Long arms, there's a registry. I think it's provincial and not federal. Yeah, I'm fairly certain it's provincial and not federal, but it's like, the government knows who has them, where they are, and where they can be located, and knows that, it's what it is. But in Canada, basically they look at firearm ownership only as for sporting, for competition, and not at all for any of the standard Second Amendment rights reasons that we know in the States. Jay McGuire says, well, HR 1 and HR 127 require 2/3 of the Senate to pass.
Nope, just majority vote in both. And so that's now maybe subject to the filibuster rule. HR 1 and HR 127 might be subject to filibuster.
And that means, for everyone who knows who Phil is, what does that mean, Robert? So that means that I understand filibuster, they can argue it until
you need 60 votes. That unless they get rid of the filibuster rule, only certain things are outside of the filibuster rule. Certain judicial appointments now can't be filibustered. Certain budget reconciliation action cannot be filibustered. But almost anything else still can, and several Democrats have said they will not back any change of that rule. So what that means is Filibuster, you sit there and you literally filibuster. You take up as much time as possible. You have enough people that do it, and you can stop the bill from passing by literally just talking for days and days and days, and you prevent them from being able to vote. And so functionally, it means that they need 60 plus senators for certain controversial legislation that's outside of the filibuster exemptions.
I'm going to tell Lomax Viva does not remember that, but now I'm going to have to go refresh my memory because I do remember there was an issue with that. Will Manchin honor his word on not getting rid of the filibuster so HR 1 and HR 127 can't pass?
Well, Sinema has also joined him, so they need both of them to change the filibuster rule. I don't think they will. Okay. So I think that's the best argument. Now, HR 127, I think a lot of its provisions violate the Second Amendment. The ability to ban entire categories. I mean, that's what we talked about. There's a case going up through the federal courts that has already ruled that California attempts to do just a portion of what HR 127 does violate the Second Amendment. My view is it clearly violates the Second Amendment because it attempts to limit your ability for self-defense. Not the registry part they can probably get away with constitutionally, but requiring any precondition to get access to a gun based on something like a pre-clearance with a psychological test and paying a big registration licensing fee, regardless of resources, banning complete areas of guns and ammunition. Those things I do think are unconstitutional. But it's one of the bills they're pushing early heavy, along with what they're likely to add to it. What Biden has talked about, what you were referencing, is the removing all immunity from gun manufacturers to effectively bankrupt gun manufacturers by allowing them to be sued in liberal jurisdictions for the use of their gun. The reason they did that way back was because of concern over political manipulation of venues to hold gun manufacturers responsible in ways that we do not hold car manufacturers, for example, or knife manufacturers, as an example. So if they do so, that you probably won't have a gun manufacturer in the United States, and it'll create all kinds of other parallel issues. I mean, it's not going to stop all efforts at gun. Some of the countries that have the highest rate of gun violence have the highest level of gun control. There's just no correlation anyone's ever been able to find. Even liberals have come to that conclusion when they've looked at the data. The liberal data nerds are like, there's just isn't evidence that gun control works. It just creates huge black markets. It's sort of the Gang Empowerment Act is really what it is. So the Cartel Empowerment Act. And, there's some people that say Democrats are, they don't necessarily mind that. But I think it's both present serious constitutional questions, and people's concerns about both statutes are very well-founded.
Oh, someone else says, first of all, I pulled up two comments that says Canada doesn't have a registry. I'll stop talking about it because I'm not sure. I took the course last year, and I'm fairly certain that if you buy it, if you buy anything, even a hunting rifle, the government knows you have it and which one you have and where it technically should be stored. Not where it should be stored, but rather who has it and where you live. This is another interesting thing because this is what they said to us in the course: is public national database of every kind of gun you own, exactly where they are, anyone can access. Big green light for thieves. Too common sense for Congress or for politicians. So with HR 1, a politician who makes a campaign promise and then doesn't keep it, can they be retroactively prosecuted for misinformation?
No, there's plenty of exemptions in the law to recover that. Theoretically, the law appears to only target information that concerns the time and date of voter registration. It's interesting. It's three things. The stuff that's the Ricky Vaughn allegations, where you vote, when you vote. Then there's the category of whether you're qualified to vote. But the third category is interesting. They're going to criminalize anybody claiming somebody endorsed somebody who didn't. Can you imagine that's their big obsession? They want to make it a crime that, oh, no, I didn't endorse so-and-so, or so-and-so didn't endorse George. I mean, come on. So it's not a wise use of legislative resources, in my view.
Rick Henwood says, one of the questions to the House managers was, given the precedent, could Congress, under pressure from the public chanting lock her up, impeach a former Secretary of State? Best question of the day.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, Republicans should probably return the favor if they get back in control. Just to remind people what a perilous precedent this was in the first place. You have to reciprocate, or otherwise they keep going unabated.
All right. What do we talk about? We might cut this one a little early so that I will go with the missus and have a romantic glass of...
I think there were two other primary topics. One was the Convention of States,
Oh, it's another thing. I don't even know where to start with it. What is the convention? Is this the idea? Is this the idea that certain states basically secede?
No, it's under Article 5. There's two ways to amend the Constitution. One is through Congress. That has to require 2/3 of the House and the Senate, and then sends to the states and 2/3 of the states. The other that completely skips Congress, and that is if the states themselves decide to hold a convention, they can amend the Constitution if they then ratify any amendments passed by that convention. It requires 2/3 of the states to form a convention, and then it requires, there's a higher number of states that have to approve. It requires 3/4 of the states to approve. What people don't know is this project's been going on for almost 10 years, and they already have a large number of states who've already agreed to a convention. They're actually, I think, only 7 or 8 states away. Now, the hard part is to get it passed. Any amendment that they recommend actually pass requires 38 states. But their theory is they could propose the kind of universally popular provisions that may actually work and so forth. So we'll see. But so yes, it does. It is constitutional to go through that process. There are a large number of states who've already joined it. It always has risk because you can't control the original articles of that we had. The Articles of Confederation. Well, what was it? I'm blanking momentarily. But that led to the first Constitutional Convention was supposed to be about amending that document. They didn't. They created a whole new document. So that's what I've always told people. With any of these conventions, there's always risk. It goes off the rails in ways you don't want it to. So that's the risk. But there is the possibility of doing so. And there's more people that are inclined to because they think they're more likely to get 2/3 of the states to sign on and 3/4 of the states to ratify than they ever are to get 2/3 of Congress to agree to some of these provisions, including things like term limits, for example. So it's and clarity in other areas. So that's where they're looking at the possibility of expanding. So it is constitutional what's taking place. It is more realistic than some people have thought. The risk you have to watch out for is making sure it doesn't go off the rails at that convention. But the protection is you have to have 3/4 of the states agree. And that can be either this legislative branch approve, or Congress can actually designate this. It can be by convention within the states. So the states can form their own conventions and ratify the prior convention at such a convention. So so that's how it can happen. And it's more achievable. It's less of a pipe dream than it seems when you first hear about it.
Okay, if anyone has any more questions on that, let me know, because I don't even have a question to ask on that. But someone did bring up the one that I do have questions on. Kyle Rittenhouse and the developments from last week.